There is something many people are afraid to admit out loud. When the narcissist walks away and suddenly appears next to a new supply with staged smiles and seemingly perfect moments, the first feeling often hits like a cut straight into your self-worth. Even though you know they were toxic, even though you know they hurt you, a part of you still wonders, are they happier without me? Is that person better than me? But that moment is also the moment you are most easily deceived, because everything you see is only the surface, a performance crafted for one purpose: to maintain the illusion that the narcissist has leveled up after leaving you. The truth is the exact opposite. In Carl Jung's psychology, what you are seeing is the persona, the social mask the narcissist uses to conceal the shadow, the inner darkness filled with shame, emptiness, and disorder. The narcissist has not changed, has not been reborn, has not discovered new love. They have simply replaced the actor in the same old script, one in which you were once the lead role. And the new supply, though they do not yet realize it, is stepping into the very same cycle, beginning with the intensity of idealization, followed by cracks, then devaluation, and ultimately abandonment or recycling. What appears to be happiness is merely the opening act of a cycle you know all too painfully. This is not a story about who is better, nor does it have anything to do with you not being enough. This is simply how a narcissistic personality operates. When the mask they used with you starts to crack, they need a new audience, a new mirror, a new source of energy to continue avoiding the truth inside themselves. The new supply becomes the place where they resume their escape from themselves, not someone who makes them happier. And when you view it through the lens of truth rather than emotion, you see clearly. You were not replaced. You were freed from a cycle. The other person is only just beginning to enter. The logic is this: if the narcissist's nature does not change, if their psychological mechanisms and internal structure do not change, if the narcissistic cycle always unfolds in the same pattern, then the outcome for the new supply cannot be any different from yours. The only thing that has changed is that you have stepped out of it, and that is the beginning of freedom. Chapter 1. Why the new supply appears in the first place. To understand why a narcissist rushes into a new supply with such ruthless speed, you have to look deeper than what the eye can see. Real love does not change color overnight, but a narcissist's love was never love, it was dependency. And that dependency needs a new host the moment the old one begins to awaken. What hurts you is not that they found someone better, but that they left so effortlessly, as if everything you gave had carried no weight at all. But pause for a moment and look straight at the truth that your pain once prevented you from seeing. The narcissist did not leave because you lacked anything. They left because you started seeing too much. This is what Dr. Otto Kernberg, one of the greatest psychoanalysts in the study of narcissism, called the collapse of the fragmented self. Their fractured ego begins to fall apart when it is no longer stabilized by your trusting gaze. A narcissist cannot tolerate anyone seeing the truth inside them. The more genuinely you love, the more sincere you are, the more deeply you understand them, the more terrified they become, because real love always illuminates the darkness, and darkness is where they've spent their whole life avoiding themselves. So the new supply is not someone who replaces you. They are someone chosen to cover the mirror you unintentionally became. You started reflecting the truth, while the narcissist needs a mirror that reflects only illusion. And the new supply appears exactly at that moment. Someone who has not yet seen the mask, who has not questioned anything, who has not sensed the abnormality in how the narcissist loves. Someone still willing to pour their whole soul into a bottomless vessel without realizing they are draining themselves. They appear because you reached a point the narcissist could no longer control. You began thinking, you began noticing, you began feeling tired, you began craving peace, And your peace, the sacred thing any healthy human needs, became a threat to them, because peace cannot coexist with chaos, and chaos is the only state a narcissist knows how to live in. That is, when they need a new supply. Not because you lost value, but because you became too aware to be manipulated, too bright to be blinded, too honest to keep playing a role in their fabricated story. It is a kind of painful maturity. The more you understand, the less compatible you become with them. The new supply appears as a natural continuation. You cannot play the role of unconditional healer forever. At some point, your heart begins to empty, your inner voice begins to speak, and your soul begins to step back to protect itself. The narcissist senses this even before you do, and their survival response is to find someone else to sustain the illusion that they are fine, that they are loved, that they have value, all of which depend on other people. So never think the new supply is better than you. They simply arrived at the moment you began to wake up. And awakening is not loss, it is a form of liberation you don't recognize at first. Chapter 2. The Illusion of the Honeymoon Phase. The narcissist's ritual of selecting new supply. To understand the narcissist's honeymoon phase, you must see it not as the beginning of a new love, but as the activation of a mechanism they have repeated dozens of times in their life. This isn't the blossoming of emotion. This is their ritual of selecting new supply, a ritual they have perfected to near mastery. And the new supply, unfortunately, often believes they are the special one, the final one, the one the narcissist truly loves. But the truth is entirely different. This phase is the product of a toxic survival instinct, not love. When a narcissist enters the idealization stage with new supply, they are not seeking genuine happiness. They are fleeing from the truth about themselves. They need a new place to dump their emptiness, a new heart to attach themselves to, like a life support device for their fragmented self. This is why they begin by projecting onto the new person an idealized version of themselves. They play the role of the perfect partner, the one who understands you most, the healer, the wounded soul longing for safe love. But none of this is real. It is the persona, a mask polished to the point where no cracks remain visible. In this stage, everything moves at an abnormal speed. Speed is the tool. The narcissist never allows the new supply enough time to observe, analyze, or question. They accelerate intimacy with tragic but beautiful stories, impossibly perfect future promises, sudden intense affection, and lightning-fast emotional bonding. The new person mistakes all this for magic, for some rare spiritual connection, a kind of twin flame phenomenon. But in reality, it is psychological capture. It comes not from genuine emotion, but from the narcissist knowing exactly what language unlocks the victim's heart before they have time to think. Those who haven't experienced narcissistic abuse call it love at first sight. But you who lived through this very performance know the truth. Real love does not grow by skipping every stage. It requires time, stability, sincerity, testing, and genuine listening. But a narcissist's love operates like a storm, sudden, intense, overwhelming, stripping away rational boundaries, making the other person believe they have met the right person at the perfect moment. It is all dopamine, intentionally triggered by the narcissist. What makes this phase cruel is that it is an almost perfect replica of what you once experienced. If you notice, they are reusing the exact formula they used on you. The same words, the same tragic stories, the same promises, even the same gestures, looks, ways of holding hands, ways of behaving identical to a chilling degree. Not because the new person inspires them, but because they do not know how to love any other way. They only know how to repeat the old script on a new stage with a new supporting actor. And this is where the new supply becomes dangerously deceived. They see the intensity of the beginning as evidence of authenticity. But you who went through the entire cycle know that the intensity is not love, but the reaction of a frightened ego searching for something to cling to. When they enter a new relationship, they bring no love, only fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of emptiness, fear of losing their self-image. So they create the illusion of instant connection to soothe that fear. The new supply is seeing the narcissist's best version, but that is also the version that never lasts, because this honeymoon phase has no real roots. It is not built on genuine emotion, but on the narcissist's internal deficiency. You can imagine this phase as a glossy coat of paint covering a rotting wall. It looks beautiful, but with the slightest impact, the paint will peel and the truth beneath will appear. Chapter 3: The Devaluation Stage. When the narcissist turns love into a weapon. The devaluation stage always begins in silence, like a cold wind seeping into a house that once felt warm. There are no grand actions, no explosive moments, just very small, hard-to-grasp details that are enough to make the new supply feel uneasy in their own skin. This is the moment when the illusion the narcissist built begins to crack, and those cracks spread not because the new person has done anything wrong, but because the narcissist has reached the point where they no longer need to maintain the mask. The idealization phase doesn't end when they stop loving. It ends when they've secured control over the other person's emotions, and once that control is in their hands, the game changes completely. The cruelty of this stage lies in the fact that it doesn't attack behavior, it attacks self-worth. The new supply begins to receive comments that seem harmless, but cut deeply. A bit of sarcasm, a small criticism, a cold remark. Each sentence is vague enough to be hard to challenge, but clear enough to hurt. The narcissist understands all too well that once they plant a seed of doubt in someone's self-esteem, the rest will grow on its own. Because when a person has once been idealized, placed on a pedestal, they feel responsible for maintaining that position. And the moment love is withdrawn, they automatically start looking for the fault in themselves, because the original image the narcissist created has programmed them to believe things used to be so beautiful, so the fact that it's bad now must definitely be my fault. I comment. The narcissist slowly withdraws their attention, gradually cools their affection, gradually shows up less and less. They don't say why. They don't explain, they just go quiet. That very silence is the most sophisticated form of punishment, making the new supply feel like they are losing something important without understanding why. They begin to try harder, texting more, being kinder, being more patient, in the hope of pulling back the sweet version from the beginning. And that is when the narcissist gets what they wanted most: emotional dependence. The more the new person tries, the deeper they sink, and the deeper they sink, the more justification the narcissist has to devalue them. One of the clearest signs of the devaluation stage is comparison. The narcissist may compare the new supply to an ex, to co-workers, to friends, even to complete strangers, just to make them feel they are not enough. Comparison is the fastest way to break down self-respect, and once that self-respect is cracked, the new supply won't leave. A person who has lost their self-respect will cling to anyone who once made them feel chosen, even if that person is the very one causing the damage. The narcissist knows this and uses it as a tool. Not only do they compare, they also reverse roles with skill. Everything they do can be turned into the new person's fault. If they are cold, your fault for changing. If they cancel plans, your fault for making them tired. If they lie, your fault for being too sensitive. They turn the victim into the culprit by making the victim doubt their own emotions. As long as the new supply still believes they must fix themselves to save the relationship, the narcissist maintains absolute power. During this stage, the narcissist also begins creating emotional hotspots, situations deliberately designed to push the new supply to their limit. They say things that are deeply hurtful, create ambiguity, behave inconsistently. When the new person can't take it anymore and reacts crying, getting angry, questioning, the narcissist immediately uses that very reaction to devalue them again. You see, you really do have a problem. This is reactive abuse, a form of manipulation that Dr. Deborah Anderson once described as a tactic of pushing the victim to the breaking point, then using that very explosion against them. The narcissist doesn't destroy the victim by direct action, but by making the victim destroy themselves. As the devaluation phase progresses, the new supply no longer knows who they are. Things they once felt proud of now become the very reasons they are attacked. They try to change, but can never satisfy the narcissist. They try to stay calm, and are told they're dull and boring. They try to express their feelings, and are labeled too sensitive. Whatever they do is wrong. And it is that constant sense of being wrong that drains them from the inside out. Their energy declines, their intuition fades, their boundaries dissolve, and their sense of self-worth disintegrates bit by bit. The crucial point is this. This cruelty does not happen because the new person is not good enough. It happens because the narcissist cannot maintain the illusion any longer. Playing the role of the perfect partner has exhausted them. When the mask falls, they are left with nothing but a wounded ego and unhealed darkness. And when that darkness rises, it needs someone to unload itself onto. The devaluation stage is the moment they begin transferring their own darkness onto another person. The bitterest part is this. The new supply thinks they are losing someone wonderful. But you who have lived through this stage know that what they are losing is an illusion, and what they are seeing now is the true nature beneath it. This is not the decline of love. This is the unveiling of the person the narcissist has always hidden. The devaluation stage is not the end of love, but the opening chapter of psychological collapse. And the new supply is now standing exactly where you once stood, the place where everything begins to break, where the soul begins to run out of strength, where love and pain merge so tightly that they can no longer be told apart. They are walking into the dark land you were fortunate enough to escape. And that truth is what frees you from any feeling of inferiority or being replaced. Because what you once believed was a loss turns out to have been protection. And what they believe is happiness is actually the doorway to tragedy. Chapter 4. The chaos stage. When the new supply begins to collapse internally, when the devaluation stage lasts long enough, a very particular psychological state begins to form in the mind of the new supply, a state I call internal chaos, internal fragmentation. This is not a single moment. It is the accumulation of hundreds of conflicting emotions happening at the same time, leaving them unable to tell what is real feeling, what is a manipulated reaction, what is memory, and what is its distorted version. This is when they enter the most dangerous part of the relationship with the narcissist, the stage where the soul starts breaking into small pieces and no longer recognizes itself. What makes this stage so brutal is not the shouting or the fights, but the toxic stillness, the kind of silence that makes a person doubt their own thoughts. The new supply begins living in a reality where there are no stable rules anymore. One day they are loved like a treasure, the next day they are treated like a burden. One night the narcissist holds them and says, "I need you," but the next morning they wake up to the coldness of a stranger. This contrast doesn't just hurt them. It destroys their sense of safety, the root of every healthy relationship. And when the sense of safety disappears, a person loses themselves. They begin to ask, what am I doing wrong? Why was everything so beautiful before, and now it's like this? Maybe I don't deserve this? Am I being too difficult? Is it because I don't love enough? These questions do not come from logic, but from the fear of being left alone with emptiness. The narcissist knows this well and uses it to feed their power. The chaos stage begins when the new supply can no longer connect the narcissist they see now with the person they met in the honeymoon phase. Those two versions are too different. One is heaven, the other is an abyss. There's no way to reconcile the two, and that impossibility creates a fracture in their perception. The new person starts to believe the problem must be them, because they cannot imagine that someone they love could change so drastically and so coldly. They don't understand that what they are seeing now is not a change, but the true self, and that what they were given in the beginning was only the mask. As their inner world becomes more chaotic, the body reacts too. The new supply can't sleep, eats poorly, feels anxious, has heart palpitations, low energy, dull skin, cries easily, panics easily. Neuroscience calls this emotional hypervigilance, a state in which the brain is constantly on alert because it doesn't know when the next storm will hit. The narcissist makes the victim live in anticipation of harm. And when someone lives long enough in that state, their nervous system begins to shut down. The frightening part is that the new person doesn't realize this is a sign of an abuse cycle. They think they are just loving the wrong person. But the truth is harsher. They are not just loving the wrong person, they are loving a distortion of love itself. They are loving someone who only knows how to take and not to give, someone who uses emotion as a weapon, someone who creates chaos in order to control. This is deliberate chaos, not accidental. The narcissist knows that when someone loses connection with themselves, they will do anything to reconnect with the only source they believe can save them, the narcissist. And that is the biggest trap. In this stage, the new supply no longer trusts their intuition. Intuition, the very thing that once protected them, has been distorted by gaslighting too many times. Each time they feel something is wrong, the narcissist denies it, mocks it, or blames it back on them. After enough repetitions, they no longer dare to trust their feelings, and this is when they become completely dependent. When a person cannot trust themselves, they will trust the one who is controlling them. What's heartbreaking is that the new supply begins to look back on the honeymoon phase as if it were proof that they were once truly happy. But they don't understand that this happiness was not the starting point of love. It was the starting point of bondage. It was not nourishment. It was bait. They forget that every heaven has a price, and that the price is now being collected from their heart day after day. As the chaos intensifies, they enter a stage of advanced self-blame. They try to correct every tiny mistake, do everything not to upset the narcissist, avoid any possible argument, stay silent when hurt, accept less and less just to keep a little warmth. And this very endurance is what makes them detach from their true self. This is when they lose their sense of identity, one of the most dangerous signs of psychological abuse. In Jungian terms, this is called shadow takeover, when someone else's darkness floods in and covers your light. The new supply can no longer tell what feelings are theirs and what feelings have been imposed on them. They dissolve into the relationship, not because of love, but because of fear. Fear of loss, fear of blame, fear of being looked down on, fear of loneliness, fear of making mistakes. And the narcissist leans on all these fears to tighten their grip. The chaos stage becomes heaviest when the new supply begins living in contradiction. They are afraid of the narcissist, but even more afraid of losing them. They are in pain inside the relationship, but feel even more pain at the thought of leaving it. They no longer love the present version, but cling to the memory of the beginning as if it were their last lifeline. This inner conflict is what keeps them from walking away, and the narcissist knows it very well. At this point, the truth is obvious to anyone on the outside. The new supply is not happy. They are not even really living. They are existing in an emotional matrix you once struggled to escape. They are falling deep into the same pit you climbed out of. They are facing the same storms you once endured alone at night. And this is what gives your heart the truth it needs. They did not replace you. They are simply walking the path you already survived. No one is more loved. Someone is just being hurt sooner. What the new person is experiencing is not love. It is the shattering of themselves. And you, standing outside the vortex now, can finally see what you were once blind to. No one is happy inside the narcissistic cycle. There are only people who haven't yet realized they are in it. Chapter 5. When the narcissist prepares to leave the new supply, the inevitable repeat. The chaos stage has never been the end of the battle. It is only the moment when the ground begins to crack. When the inner turmoil of the new supply has gone deep enough, when their self-esteem has been eroded, when they can no longer distinguish between what they truly want and what the narcissist needs from them, that is exactly when the narcissist moves into the next phase, preparation to leave. The painful part is that this leaving never happens the way a normal person ends a relationship. There is no real breakup, no clear reason, no closure. It happens like a ghost slowly pulling warmth out of a room, leaving emptiness but no footprints. Before disappearing, the narcissist always enters a state psychologists call emotional withdrawal. But for them, this withdrawal is not a sign of ending, it is a sign of hunting. They begin scanning their environment, searching for another source of supply, a new psychological host to attach to. While the current supply is fighting through chaos, the narcissist becomes strangely calm, not because they are fine, but because they can smell the signal. This supply is about to be depleted. When the new supply starts asking questions like, is something wrong? Did I do something to upset you? Why are you avoiding me? That is when the narcissist retreats even further. Not because they don't hear, but because they want to reinforce their sense of power. In their mind, a supply who has begun to question is a supply that has lost value. They want someone who always believes, always submits, always chases. When exhaustion starts to show in the victim's eyes, they feel bored. When doubt slips into the victim's voice, they feel annoyed. When the victim starts to notice that something is off, they feel threatened. And anything that makes them feel threatened, whether it's truth or illusion, is a signal to run. In this phase, the narcissist is no longer seeking affection. They are seeking stimulation. They need the newness of new supply, and the person standing in front of them no longer provides that. You've experienced this before. One day they are like a warm breeze, holding you, promising everything. The next day, they become a cold void that leaves your heart stranded. The new supply is now going through that exact same shift, not because they did anything wrong, but because the narcissist is operating from their distorted survival instinct. As they prepare to leave, the narcissist's tone begins to change. They say less, but what they say cuts deeper. They show up less often, but just enough to make the victim unable to let go. They create long stretches of silence to see whether the other person will beg, soothe, or lower themselves. If they do, the narcissist feels powerful. If they don't, the narcissist feels offended. Every reaction is used as a measurement to decide when to pull out completely. But the withdrawal is never straightforward. They leave traces of warmth mixed into the coldness. A sudden message, a vague promise, a memory brought up at just the moment the victim is about to regain clarity. This is not love. This is breadcrumbing, dropping tiny crumbs to keep the other person from walking away completely. The narcissist always keeps the back door open. They never want the old supply to disappear. They only want them to stand there weaker, more desperate, and ready to return whenever they are called. At this point, the new supply often falls into a state psychology calls cognitive dissonance. They try to connect the two opposite images of the narcissist, the heaven of the beginning and the hell of the present, but cannot explain how the same person can treat them in two such different ways. And when they cannot find an answer, they start turning the blame onto themselves. The narcissist exploits this moment. They let the victim drown in guilt, in fear, in questions that have no resolution. Then one day, the discard happens. No warning, no conversation, no closure. They simply are no longer there. They vanish from the new supply's life as if they never existed. Messages go unanswered. Calls are avoided. Their presence is withdrawn like the last breath of a ghost. The new supply falls into a terrifying emptiness, not only because they have lost the person they love, but because they feel they've lost the best version of themselves, the version the narcissist constructed in order to hook them. The most painful part is that just as the new supply collapses, the narcissist shows up somewhere else, with someone else, replaying the exact same script from the beginning. They are sweet again, gentle again, wounded again, promising again, mirroring again, and anyone looking from the outside will once more assume that they've finally found someone who fits them better. But you know very well this is just the next version of the same cycle. There is no upgrade. There is no new happiness. There is only the recycling of harm. While the new supply is falling apart, you, the one who has already lived through this cycle, can finally see the truth you once couldn't. No one is happy in the narcissist's loop. No one is treated better. No one fits better. No one is the right person at the right time. Each supply is just a new chapter of the same story, and every chapter ends the same way. You understand this? The new supply does not. They are standing at the edge of the cliff you once fell from. They are going through the collapse you once survived. And this shows you a powerful truth. You have escaped something others don't even understand yet. You survived a place where others are still drowning. It does not mean you lost. It does not mean you were lesser. It does not mean you weren't enough. It simply means you arrived earlier than they did on the path of seeing reality. And that reality is this: a narcissist never leaves because they found something better. They leave because they cannot stay with anyone for long.